So, Sadika Kutan, my name is Hongsit, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna speak in English. Hopefully, it helps. If not, in any case, at any part that I speak and you happen not to understand, I do have a translator on this call. So I just wanted to start out by saying that in reference to the code by Kung Fu Panda and also very commonly being shared when we talk about yesterday is history and tomorrow is mystery. So, but today is a gift, and that's why it is called the present. So with that said, as much as to say Sinwattana has walked the last 8 years in Thailand, it felt like it was just yesterday. Because every time or every day, there are always something new that we come face to face that we have to handle. COVID wasn't planned for, and many people never expect anything like this to happen, but it happened. And how resilient are all the people in terms of how we actually face up to COVID and fight COVID and try to survive in COVID, or even in some cases, many of the businesses actually thrive during COVID. So I'm just looking at we've passed 8 years, and what will be another 8 years looks like. So I chose this challenge and conversation, to not just myself, but also to have the team to think. Today, if we serve our customers 8 years later, will that customer grow with us? Today, if we help somebody, will somebody become better in another 8 years' time? And will they actually in return help somebody else? So our main goal as far as crowdfunding is concerned, as I've also told my team yesterday, that whatever that is happening in the world and whatever that's happening in Thailand, we can reference, we can compare, but we can never feel in any way short of or deprived, because we do have a choice to move forward or to stay put and be the same. So if we want to move forward, we have to change. How do we change? And how do crowdfunding actually plays a very vital role in this whole entire transformation? So when we talk about like transformation, I don't just say transform for the sake of transforming, but rather how do we actually transform what we think we're going to do into reality, from words to reality. There may be projects that we have worked on for like many months, or even sometimes in cases, we plan for it a couple of years. But when it comes to the actual execution, for Thailand, for my dad, just want to do means you can just do like that. We learn the rope on what it takes for us to cross the different obstacles to serve the SMEs. So our focus as far as Sinwattana is concerned is that we focus on solving and supporting the SMEs, and of course also in the context of social innovation, and drive them forward. And with SMEs, we drive them to beyond the regional conversation, what will be the possibilities of going global? So this is a very, very exciting conversation for us, and also for many SMEs. And when we talk about those sectors that we think about working with, and I believe also many of you come across the very big conversation on BCG, but we don't want to just say BCG, biocircular green economy. We drill down to say what exactly are these sectors and who are involved in these sectors. how do we actually support the SMEs beyond the conversation of just Bangkok? Because in Thailand, there's 77 beautiful provinces. Each has their unique advantage. Each has their talents. So how do we actually empower this vital conversation to transform the whole entire Thailand landscape, whether it is from the economic landscape or the community or the people? There's the full spectrum of it. So one thing that I've also learned in the last 2 years of COVID is that Thailand, and also just like many other countries, are very, very resilient. When we face crisis, we may complain at the very beginning. That's quite normal of human being. We complain. After the complaint, we said, okay, now what do we have to do? And therefore, we have actually seen many instances where people come together to support, whether it is a context or conversation about food, or even medical needs, or even supporting people who are in home isolation. So in the sectors focus, we are talking about like health and wellness, which is extremely important. Food, or agriculture and food. And food, we are already driving on the conversation on future food. So what exactly is future food? So there are different variants. It depends on which side of the table that you're sitting to understand future food. So other than future food, there is this also big conversation about climate change. So what can people like us, you, do about climate change? Or we just point finger to the government and say, oh, this is government's role and responsibility. No, it's actually every one of our responsibility. And it's not just Thailand. It is really the global conversation. When it comes to green investment, when it comes to green economy, when it comes to sustainability. So in that conversation itself, it actually also gets us to look at how well utilized are we in terms of looking at technology, innovation, and also the context and conversation of creativity. And moving forward, internally, we always also counter check and say, okay, if future is a mystery or tomorrow is a mystery, then how do we try to peek and try to imagine or visualize or read some of those information that are publicly shared by the futurists or the global leaders, to also put ourselves on track to follow closely and leverages on all the development and see how we can actually insert crowdfunding. Today, Sinwattana crowdfunding, we have basically offering from the social crowdfunding, donation reward model. And then we have the bigger conversation on investment, both equity and hopefully debt securities. And of course, in the global scene, crowdfunding has already surpassed billions of dollars. And as far as Thailand, we have a lot of work to do. And in the pipeline, we do have those sectors that I mentioned, those business that happen in those sectors of future food, renewable energies, climate change, or nature-based solutions. And in fact, just yesterday, there was a big article about biodiversity dividends. So people are also looking at this whole conversation on nature-based solutions. So we would be having conversation on all these areas by sectors after today's conversation. So and I just wanted to also say, looking at some of my notes to make sure I don't forget any of the points, is that and when COVID actually happens, the whole world actually stops. And not only that it stops, the whole world actually re-look into how we are doing basically daily. And there is a shift in terms of how people are operating right now. And that also spurred our internal brainstorming conversation in terms of, is this COVID situation, of course, it's not a good situation, but it has pressed us and pushes every single human being to actually relook on how we are doing things as in order to make better progress for a better living world. And with that said, we also look into the conversation like, other than the core sectors, we also look at resources that we need. As today, when Sinwattana, since Sinwattana established, we have the commitment in not just within our team, but also committing to the society. Step by step, we do our very best to serve. Partners, collaborators matters. You could be one of our partners or collaborators, even if you are an investor or even an issuer. The whole conversation on the crowd power and the crowd wisdom really matters. And you will see that transformation when people start to move forward. And of course, also to address some of the feedback that we got over the last, couple of years in terms of work that we do, and also moving forward, Sinwattana will look into improvement of the technology in terms of providing investor profile page. Those are in the roadmap, so that investors have a page to look at their investment profile, look at how their investment are doing. There are also areas like, for example, not just the investors, but also the issuers in terms of their direction, whether they are exiting through IPOs or they are moving towards like being acquired. There are some who are built to be acquired. There are also some that are looking at the model of SPAC. This conversation on SPAC was also very much recently being brought up. And as I've also mentioned to my team this morning, that SPAC is very getting popular. It is kind of like going to be one of the huge conversation on global finance. And how do crowdfunding play towards this is that when we empower the SMEs, when we start to work with the SMEs have the options of exit either a IPO or SPAC or even M&A or even a private equity model. We have already lined up resources and people who are moving towards those directions. So very interesting model that we're seeing is that SMEs today have even stronger desire within them to grow their business. Even we are all facing COVID. Every single one is trying their very, very best to make that difference and to strive through this COVID situations. So, and I just wanted to close this short conversation by sharing that, reminding ourselves in Sinwattana, what would be our legacy in another 8 years, 16 years, 24 years, or many more years to come. I hope I can groom more younger generation in Thailand to take on this major role of crowdfunding to serve Thailand SMEs. And hereby I say thank you very much, Khop Khun Naka.